Yes, we are reaching the end of my video game journey since the beginning. We are on to the legendary PlayStation. Now, I didn't think much about the PlayStation because if you've seen my other videos before this one, I'll explain why. Because I felt kind of like not really getting ripped off, but I didn't trust any of these companies anymore. The big ones like Panasonic, Philips, whatever. I think the Amiga came out with one as well. I didn't trust any of these other systems trying to come out with, these companies trying to come out with a video game system that was going to take on the big boys at the time. So that was Nintendo and Sega. So I didn't think Sony was going to do anything different than any of the other companies had already attempted to do. But other people were getting hyped up about it and they were telling me about it more so than any of the other ones before, but I still wasn't buying into it. As a matter of fact, I was trying to warn them. I was like, don't get it, okay? It's gonna be a flash in the pan. They're not going to beat Sega, they're not going to beat Nintendo. So don't even bother. Don't waste your money on it. It was in video game magazines all over the place. That's what we were looking at. We were looking at beginner games. There were some arcade games that kind of displayed what the PlayStation can do, like Tekken 1 and I believe Ridge Racer. And both of those games did come out on the system right away. And there was Battle Arena Toshinden as well. That was one of the first games I did play for it. And we're going to get to that though, because I didn't go for it. But then when it did come out, I was seeing it being a little bit more popular than what I expected. Not everyone owned a 3DO. Only I did, as far as I knew, right? But one of my cousins over here on my mother's side had one. Some cousins over here had some. A friend of mine had one. These PlayStations were becoming more mainstream than what I thought. And I was just thinking, they're just buying them because it's popular, it's trendy, you know what I mean? I was still sticking with my Sega Saturn. But after a while, Sega started stopping making games for it, and it was getting a little bit stale, playing Virtua Fighter over and over and over again and not really having anything else new to play. So then one time, I'm gonna tell you my first experience with it. My cousin had it, and I wanted to see what the big deal about it was. He had Battle Arena Toshinden for it. I think he had Tekken or Ridge Racer for it as well. But the first game that he plugged in was that, because I wanted to see how is this PlayStation thing going to battle against Sega Saturn? Is it going to do any good against Virtua Fighter? Let's see how good, if it can beat it at all. And the very first thing that I saw was I was impressed with the 3D graphics right away. The polygons were a little bit more smoother. There was a little bit better anti-aliasing or textures on them as well. They weren't as blocky. They didn't have as much jaggies. They looked not a lot better, but it was an improvement over the Sega Saturn. Then, when they started playing the game, I never heard of this Battle Arena Toshinden game before. We're used to mainstream titles like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Virtua Fighter, whatever. So we started playing it, and then they go, well, how do you play it? Well, we picked it up and played it pretty quickly because we were like, it uses Street Fighter motions. It's basically just Street Fighter with weapons. So it's kind of like Samurai Showdown in a way, but in 3D. But it felt like Street Fighter when you played it. The jumping was better, jump attacks were better, the game was more faster paced than Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter is very floaty jump and is not very fast paced in terms of like how you move in the game. Your attacks are quick, but this game, it just flowed a lot more like Street Fighter, and thus it was more fun. And we kept playing it more and playing it more, and I felt the controller for the very first time. And here's a cool story too about the PlayStation when I first touched the controller. In the pictures, it looked like the D-pad was like 4 separate buttons. And we were like, I don't know if that's gonna work very good. We're always used to a solid cross in there, right? But it tricked us though, because it wasn't. When we played the controller, it was a solid piece of plastic in there. It was just made to look like 4 buttons. So it was actually better than I thought. It was just a little bit stiff. They started loosening them up as the newer controllers came out. And also the PlayStation was the first time that I can remember of using actual dual analog sticks on the DualShock controller when it came out. Before, that's just completely mainstream nowadays and probably will be in the future. So the more I started playing Toshinden, we were playing 2 players for a while. We played Ridge Racer for a little bit. I think we played a little bit of Tekken as well. I still wasn't completely convinced. I still stuck with the Sega Saturn. again, I'm getting bored, it's getting stale, until one day, this is where everything started to change for me. We're talking a little bit more farther in the future now, not quite, but more games started coming out with PlayStation more than any other systems I noticed. And I was still kind of being defiant against it. I was like, it's gonna fail soon, just wait, but it wasn't. And I was actually getting a little bit jealous. I wanted it to fail. I'll be completely honest with you. I wanted it to fail because I didn't want to be wrong. No one likes being wrong. And so what happened was my cousin, okay, I can't remember, he was going on a vacation somewhere, but he couldn't take his PlayStation with him, and rather than, he didn't want to have it get stolen or broken or something like that, right? So he said, can you take care of it for me? He knew that I always took care of my video game systems, and he goes, you can play it as much as you want, just at least I know it's with you and I know it's safe. So he lent it to me, and it had Street Fighter Alpha and it had Wipeout, and I can't remember what the other games were. It had about 4 games with it, but the other 2 were irrelevant because it was Street Fighter Alpha and it was Wipeout. And I finally, gritting my teeth, okay, not admitting defeat, but I was like, I'm going to plug it in and I'm going to play these games anyway because there's just nothing else to do, right? And what happened was I found myself playing them more and more and more and more and more until the system actually, it broke me. Sony PlayStation broke me down. And I said, this stupid little gray box beat me. It actually is really good. Street Fighter Alpha was amazing to me. It was exactly like the arcade. The color was good. Like, I would say even if you compared it to Sega Saturn, the color is even slightly better on the PlayStation 1. The sound chip was amazing. The music was incredible. And there was that cool little thing that you could do with PlayStation. Not a lot of people know this. When it first came out, you could put the game into it like Ridge Racer, and then you could, once it was loaded, you could take the game out and you could put your own music disc into the game and you could play your own music while you were playing the game. The system, it's not a trick, the system actually promoted that. It was like a quirky little thing that they were advertising with it, one extra kind of neat thing that you could do. And then it had these cool little memory cards you could stick into them as well, and that's how you saved your game. So that was it. My mind was made up. I knew now that I could invest the money into it, which was only just like a couple $100 anyway. Before, I'm used to spending like a lot of money on it. So I think that kind of pissed me off as well, that the system was so good and it was like less than half the price of these super powerful 32-bit CD systems that I had bought in the past. So I bought one, I saved up for it. I didn't have a lot of money at the time to get it though. I was just a little bit broke, but I had enough money to get it. I was broke because of all the stupid expensive systems I bought before. And I got it, but I couldn't afford the memory card for it. I could only afford the system and 2 games for it. Right? So I figured it'd be better to get the games than to get the memory card. I'll get the memory card like a week from now or something, right? It was only like 25 bucks or something, but I got Resident Evil, knowing nothing about the game at all, and I got Twisted Metal Part 1. So the very first game that I plugged in, because I saw Resident Evil in the magazines and it looked pretty cool, and people were talking about it, saying this is a very unique game, yada yada yada, and it's made by Capcom, so expect at least some form of quality. When I played it, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't expect this game to be this damn freaking good, and it almost completely solidified PlayStation in my mind as being the end-all, be-all best video game system of the time. I played it, and being a horror movie buff, I was so into it. I was like, I can't believe how good this game is. The sound, the atmosphere, the story, even with all of the crummy dialogue that people make fun of nowadays, it was still so awesome. And get this, I didn't have a memory card, right? I didn't think that you didn't really need it when you first got the system. Little did I know that in Resident Evil, you can get the typewriter ink ribbons to save your game, but without a memory card, you can't save your game. So imagine that, me just jumping into the deep end of Resident Evil right away, playing the game for the very first time, not knowing anything about it at all, and I can't save my game. So imagine how terrifying, imagine the amount of anxiety more that you get from that, knowing that if I die, I have to start all the way from the beginning again. And you know what? I loved it. Then I had my Twisted Metal game, which I wasn't too impressed with when I was playing it single player. The thing that blew it right over the top is when I brung it over again to one of my cousins on my mother's side who didn't have any PlayStation, didn't ever play this system before. And I always like to do this lots of times. I was the guy who always had the newest system, so I'd like to show it off and get other people to share it with me as well. And they were excited about it. And I brought it over there to their place, and I had 2 controllers for it. And I said, let's play Twisted Metal. It was split screen, and you could play versus mode with it. I'm gonna tell you, it was one of the best nights of our life. We had pizza, we had Coke, we had Oreo cookies, we had popcorn, and we had Twisted Metal all night long. That game was so fun. I never played anything like this before in a versus match. We were just back and forth, picking the different cars, trying them all out, you know, getting angry at each other, laughing at each other, and crashing over, jumping, like flying over when you're fighting on top of rooftops and flying off the building, shooting your guns all the way down before your car explodes, hitting the ground. It was amazing. And then later on, okay, we had the PlayStation for longer. Doom came out for it finally, and it was one of the best versions of Doom, and I remember this story. This is probably going to be my last PlayStation story, so thank you very much for sticking with me for this long to the end of the video. So what we did was we rented another PlayStation, and we tethered them both together, and we had 2 TVs. We had 2 little TVs like we did back in the day, and we put them back to back, and again, all night long, all day long, it was nothing but Doom versus matches, you know, like death matches, back and forth on that. And that was actually pretty incredible. Even, you know, to get it to work, it wasn't hard to get it to work. It was just amazing. It's just something that we haven't done before. We hadn't tethered 2 systems together. This is before we started getting into the major PC craze, you know, and everything goes online after that. And then, you know, death matches and stuff like that is just extremely common after a while. This was way before that. So it was incredible. The PlayStation 1 did all these things, and we know the history of it, of what happened after that. We're still playing it today. I have my PlayStation 5. I love it. And that was it. So it was just an absolutely literal game-changing experience for the industry. Other great games that came out for it, there's too many off the top of my head. I modded the system later on. You could mod them, you know, and you could get for $60, I got like literally almost like $10 a game. I just had a stack of copy games out for it, so there was that bonus you could do. Legendary title like Legacy of Kain. When I played Legacy of Kain, I was like, my god, this is even better than Zelda in my mind. I love the original Legacy of Kain. That was like a PlayStation exclusive again, and they were coming out with more exclusives for it. That there's too much things. I can't believe how much stuff happened with the PlayStation 1. Truly legendary system, changed everything forever. So that's it. Thanks guys for listening to my stories about the PlayStation 1. Yeah, I can't believe it's been this long, and it was a system that I thought was gonna fail, and it was the most wrong that I had ever been in the industry in my entire life. So thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. If you did, hit the thumbs up for PlayStation and for this video. And if you want to see me talk about another retro system, you know what to do. You click over here in this box over there. If you're new to the channel and you want to subscribe, you just click that bubble over there, people. And I'll see you next time.